Hey everybody, welcome to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing a brand new series called I Believe. This series is going to begin this weekend here at the church. As always, I'm joined by Brandon Connor, our senior pastor. We're glad that you're watching, listening, wherever you are today. Thanks for tuning in. Stick around. We've got an awesome episode planned for you.
You're listening to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. The goal? To know Jesus a little better so we can live like him a little more. And now, here's today's host, Wes Feldner.
All right, welcome back to The Loop. My name is Wes, and I'm the creative arts pastor here at Mosaic. I've got Brandon Connor, our lead pastor here at the church, and today we're here to talk about a brand new series we've got coming up here at Mosaic. But before I do, I've got to say that our study through the book of John has been awesome. Brandon, can you give us a quick update on where we've been and talk to us a little bit about what we've been studying in the book of John?
Yeah, we've been at it for about 3 months now, and I think we've covered 2 whole series. And so it's kind of slow going, but we are now into John chapter 4. So we started obviously the year with a whole series called Who Needs God? Felt like that was a great series, you know, as we look at the fact that John's introducing Jesus and why Jesus came into the world, gave us an opportunity to really think, man, why do we really even need God in our life? And so for those people who might have been living life saying, I don't really need God in my life, I think it probably helped a lot of those. And then for some of us who sometimes lose sight of the fact that, man, we need God not just to do something for us in the next life, we need God to do a lot of things for us in this life. I think it was clarifying and kind of eye-opening for us just to be able to really reflect on why Jesus really came into the earth in the first place. And then after we did that, we jumped into a series called Greater, really tried to help people understand that Jesus really is greater.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that we could spend our life chasing after. There are a lot of things that this world has to offer, but in comparison to Jesus, and that they just pale in comparison.
Right.
And so we really do want to call people to understand that there are not just needs that we have in our life that God wants to meet, but there really is a greater way to do life that Jesus has called us to. And so, go back to that book that we talked about in the very first series of the year, the Erwin McManus book that is called The Genius of Jesus.
Right.
In that book, he says that really what Jesus does, the genius of Jesus, is that he shows us a greater way to be human.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want people to understand. Like, Jesus doesn't just come to solidify our relationship with God. He's showing us a better way to be human by showing us a better way to deal with problems. He's showing us a better way to do life by helping us understand that there really can be certainty about our future rather than living with so much uncertainty about our future. We've spent some time talking about how Jesus shows us a better way to do life by keeping the focus off of ourselves and onto him.
Jesus. Yeah.
And so it just really is. There's so much about Jesus that really is greater, and we just want people to understand that.
Yeah. That's awesome. I feel like each and every week we just continue to get feedback from folks who are attending the services or watching online, and God is doing some really neat things in their hearts and lives. So we're excited, and we're going to continue that study of John. And so we've got a brand new series kicking off this weekend called I Believe. So give us a quick snapshot of that series, what we can expect, what we're going to be talking about, and why this is really important.
Yeah, it's really important because it really gets to the heart of the entire book, or the primary theme in the Gospel of John. And so when John writes, he talks about a lot of things, but there's this thread that is woven all the way throughout the book. And John even says a couple of different points in the book, the reason I'm writing this book is so that you will believe. And so what we believe must be pretty important if John is going to take some time to write all of this content to help Christians or people who are thinking about becoming Christians, followers of Jesus, help them understand what they should really believe. Yeah. And so, I started thinking about that, just, anticipating the new series and trying to get ready for it. And I thought, people believe all kinds of crazy things in our world today.
It's true.
It's totally true. I mean, I thought about, the whole conversation revolving around fake news, and like there's probably people on both sides of the political aisle who are probably sitting there going, are you kidding me? Like they actually had the nerve to publish that or produce that. Like that's obviously fake news.
Yeah.
And so we see so much content in the information age that sometimes it really is hard to know what to believe.
Yeah. I think even more than that, more than just the fake news, I think about And I'm like this, like I sometimes subscribe to conspiracy theories or whatever, because it's kind of fun and interesting to just kind of go down the rabbit hole or whatever.
So what's one that's like captured your attention? Be honest.
Bigfoot. I mean, like, seriously, like, I don't, it's fun, you know, and I mean, like, let's talk about that. So what are some other conspiracy theories that people like, I mean, in our culture, in our world, like, it has really captured the attention of people, and they really are like sold out to this stuff. I mean, there's more than that, more than Bigfoot.
Like, hey, did they ever really go to the moon? The flat earth theory. So here's a personal story. A couple of years ago, I have this friend, his name's Jake. Okay. You know Jake, actually.
I know Jake.
So Jake
but
and
I don't think I know this. This is going to be good.
You don't know this. So there was this show that came out on the Discovery Channel.
Yeah.
And typically speaking, like when you look at the Discovery Channel, you're kind of thinking, man, like these are people who are somewhat in the scientific community. And what I didn't realize when this show first came on is it was actually called a docudrama. Which is totally different than a documentary. Like a documentary is like, hey man, this is what happened.
This is what happened.
I'm going to tell you the story. But a docudrama is kind of like this made-up story.
Sure.
And so what they had is they had these scientists who were talking about mermaids. And they were creating this storyline, and they were like, man, there's like people in all these different parts of the world who have these images carved into rock. And so like they're seeing it, and these people on this side of the world are seeing it. Maybe like these mermaids exist. And so Jake and I, we start kind of going back and forth about all this stuff. And like I'm just feeding him all this information from this docudrama. And we get to kind of the end or deeper into the conversation. I'm like, so Jake, like, where are you? Like scale of like 0 to 100. And he was like, man, I'm probably like at like 50%. How about you?
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, dude, I'm like at 1%. And he was like, you've been telling me all this time? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't even believe that junk. Like, are you kidding me? Docudrama. But it's interesting. Like our world is almost like somewhat fascinated.
Absolutely.
To the point that the Discovery Channel is actually going to produce a docudrama around something that is pretty much a conspiracy theory. And so it's weird how fascinated we are with things that really aren't true. Yeah. But it's fun to consider the possibility that maybe life is that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
I don't know what that says about us.
One of my favorite things to talk about here on the podcast as we're getting ready to dive into a new series is the series graphics. It's kind of this invisible element that, you know, sometimes people don't even see it, but there is like a level of intentionality to what we're doing when we're trying to develop a graphic or, you know, an image to kind of promote what we're doing. And so this one is no different. Like this is an interesting graphic. So the series is called I Believe, but talk to us a little bit about the graphic and how we landed on this concept of this eye and all of that and why that's significant.
Yeah. I think people think we just sit around all day and don't do anything. And we actually put some thought into some of the stuff that we do. Yeah. And so what we did is we took the word believe and then we capitalized the I right in the middle of the word. And the reason that we did that is because we really want people to get away from this is what the pastor believes.
Sure.
This is what my parents believe. Yeah. This is what the church believes. This is what the church has historically believed. This is what someone else believes. And we really want to push people to think about, well, what do you really believe? Yeah. Because ultimately that's what matters. In fact, Jesus even had a conversation with his disciples one time, and he was talking about like, hey, what do people say about me? Who do people say that I am? And they end up having this whole conversation about kind of the buzz on the street about Jesus at that time. And they were like, well, some people think this, and some people think this, and some people are saying this. And then Jesus just gets real with them. And he says, but what about you? Yeah. Like who do you say that I am? What do you really believe? And ultimately, that's what matters. Yeah. None of us can kind of cruise through life saying that what I believe doesn't even really matter. This is what everyone else believes. This is what my favorite author believes. This is what my college professor believes. This is what my podcast guy believes. This is what, that stuff doesn't matter. At some point, we have to take responsibility for what we believe, and we need to understand that really what we believe very much shapes and affects the life that we live.
That's great. Yeah. Sounds like it's going to be like a really personal series, because it really, when you boil it down, it really is about what we believe. It's all about us. So hopefully.
I hope people don't just sit there and go, man, like I know somebody who has some crazy beliefs, man, get past what everybody else believes and let's think about what you really truly believe.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that then. Let's dig a little deeper into this idea. So why is it really important to talk about what we believe?
Yeah. I would say it like this. I think that whatever you believe, it ultimately affects the life that you live. Now, let me explain it like this. I am not an expert on what is happening right now between Ukraine and Russia.
Sure.
Okay. In fact, I would say not only am I not an expert, I'm ignorant.
Oh, yeah.
In large part about what's really happening. But I saw this article the other day, and the title of the article was "A War Built on Lies." Now, I want you to think about that. Now, if that's true, then what they're saying is that Vladimir Putin believed lies about what was happening in Ukraine, or he developed a belief system about the way the world is and the way the world should be.
Right.
Maybe he reinterpreted some things historically, and because of what he believed in his mind, he said, we're going to go to war over it. And people died over it.
Yeah.
And so when we start thinking about what we believe, we need to understand that ultimately our beliefs, they really do end up affecting the life that we live. So on a much lighter note, okay, so I've been battling this leg injury for a while. I was getting into running, man, back in the spring when it wasn't, really, really hot. It was like winter. It was great
Perfect
to run.
running
so
weather.
Started really stretching out my distances, ended up hurting my leg, and now I'm kind of out. And so it's kind of been a bummer. So I'm having a conversation with my father-in-law. They came in to visit, and he was like, literally said this to me. He said, you wouldn't be having all these health problems if you didn't exercise. Now, I want you to think about that train of thought. If you really do believe that, what are you going to do? I'm never going to exercise again.
Yeah, exactly.
Because people who exercise, they have all kinds of health problems. Well, no, you have some injuries, but if you don't exercise, you end up having all kinds of other health problems. And so, in a very real way, he's joking and kidding, because he's not into exercise all that much, I don't think. But I think, man, what we believe really can end up affecting the life that we live. And sometimes we believe some really stupid things.
Yeah.
And when we believe stupid things, we end up doing stupid things.
Yeah. I'm assuming that, ultimately the crux of this is for us to understand, what we believe in the context of the Bible. And the Bible has some pretty unbelievable stuff in it. So talk to us a little bit about that and where, how that kind of fits with this content.
Yeah. So, I think the Bible is pretty much what shapes our worldview, and it helps us kind of think through, man, if we were going to look at the world, if we were going to look at life, how should we think about it? And I think that most people kind of go through the Bible and they go, man, there's some valuable content in there. And the reason I say that is because the Bible is the number one selling book in the history of the world every single year since the invention of the printing press. Okay. So people obviously read that book and they go, there's some very, very valuable information in there. Now, the challenge is that there's also some things in there that are very unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people end up getting hung up on those things, and it becomes really difficult for them because they're not really sure, man, where should I go with this? And how should I understand this? And is this book a reliable book? Is it a source of information that I can actually believe in, or is it something that I should be leery of? And so we've got to be able to walk through that and address the fact that, man, there's some tough stuff in here.
Yeah.
And what I typically see in people's lives is when they come across some of the unbelievable passages, if they don't ask questions, their doubts start to grow one question at a time. But if they work through those questions and those unbelievable passages, and they consider maybe there are some good answers, and they ask questions and they speak with people who might know a little bit more, instead of their doubts growing one question at a time, their faith starts to grow one question at a time.
Yeah.
And so we want people to have full confidence in what the Bible teaches, not just feel like, man, there's some unbelievable stuff in there, and you've got to have discretion to pick and choose what you believe and what you don't believe.
Yeah. That's interesting. As you were talking about that, like it made me think of my history with the church. I've been going to church my entire life, and maybe there's some folks that are like me, or maybe folks that really haven't been involved in the church for very long, but you see all these different facets of the church. We have different denominations, and there are probably all kinds of different beliefs about the same book or the same passage or whatever. So talk to us about that, and where all of these beliefs and different things come from, even just within the church. And we're talking about the Bible, like the same Bible.
Yeah, so the New Testament has a line in it, and it's kind of a warning. It says knowledge puffs up.
Yeah.
And, it's not that we shouldn't have knowledge. We need knowledge. We need to know what we believe. But we also need to be aware of the fact that when we start to study and really think through our beliefs, pride can start to creep into our lives. It can puff us up. It can make us into the kinds of people who think we know and other people don't know.
Right.
And so I would just say to our whole church family, man, this is why it's so important for us to have a spirit of humility.
Right.
Because if you actually, and I mean really go back and study what people have believed throughout the history of the church, what you will discover is that there are people who are way smarter than you, who love Jesus as much as you, who believe in the Bible and they're committed to the Bible as much as you, and they see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I just think that we need to understand what we believe, but we also need to practice a spirit of humility when it comes to our understanding of some of these issues. And so, typically the church has talked about it in this way. There are primary issues and then there are secondary issues. The primary issues, like, hey man, the Bible is God's word.
Yeah.
Jesus really is the only way to eternal life. Like those are issues where we can take a hard stand. But when it comes to other issues like the second coming of Jesus Christ, those are issues where it's a little bit more difficult to discern exactly what the Bible is teaching.
Yeah.
So we can take the time to understand all of the different perspectives, and we can talk about those things,
ask
try to understand, we
like
can
you
ask
said.
questions, and in a very respectful way, try to understand what we believe, but also try to understand what other people believe, and then walk away with a spirit of humility where we hold those secondary issues a little bit more loosely than the primary issues, and we don't go to war over those things. We can respect each other enough to where we go, you know what, even if we don't agree on these things in terms of what we believe on secondary issues, and we can still love each other. Here's the truth. Jesus loved people who didn't even agree with him on the primary issues.
Right.
Okay. So the church needs to be able to get to that place where we love people even if we don't agree with people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've heard them, they use the phrase, the majors and the minors.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. If we can keep the main thing, that's what's most important. In this other secondary things, we can kind of work that out, ask lots of questions, like you said.
Absolutely.
So I know that, we have a lot of folks that listen to the podcast that are, maybe pre-believers or skeptics, or, they're just kind of, figuring this thing out, and maybe they are asking a lot of questions. I think one of the biggest things or hangups for those folks is in this, the realm of belief. They would say something like, I can't believe in a God who... fill in the blank, whether that's, would allow bad things to happen to good people, or allow starving kids all over the world, or whatever. So, what would you say to folks like that are listening to today's episode and they're saying, this idea of belief, but I can't believe in a God that blank. Like, what would you say to those folks?
Man, that's tough, because I think we all look at situations in our world and we wish that some things were different. Truth is, though, I think God wishes some things were different.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have to look at those really difficult issues, and we have to understand first and foremost what's at stake here.
Yeah.
When it comes to, I can't believe in a God who, we're talking about something heavy, maybe the most important thing in your life. You're ready to walk away from a relationship with God, from your belief in God, because of the way in which you see this situation. So number one, let's really understand the gravity of the situation. Then number two, let's be honest about the fact that sometimes we're wrong.
That's right.
Sometimes we don't see the situation clearly. Sometimes we get our facts wrong. Sometimes our interpretation of events is wrong. Sometimes our perspective is completely wrong. Sometimes we recall the past in a way that's not really accurate. And so what we need to do is we need to approach those really heavy issues, and we need to tread lightly. We need to really be careful that we don't walk away from the most important thing in our lives because we misunderstood the situation.
Wow.
And we placed blame in a place where blame was not deserved.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot, unfortunately. And so we just want to help people work through that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Man, it sounds like this series is going to be incredible. Like, I'm excited to dive in. I hope so too. I think so. Well, talk to us a little bit about where we are in the book of John. Like, give us a glimpse of what we're going to cover as we navigate through this series.
Yeah, so we're coming into the end of John chapter 4, and then we're going to be in most of John chapter 5. And so as people are kind of getting ready for the series, if they want to go ahead and do a little bit of homework and read ahead, then go ahead and jump into that last section of John 4 and then all of chapter 5. And we'll just kind of take it one story at a time. It is a shorter series. I think it's only a 3-week series. That's the way we've broken it down. And so we're going to be just kind of looking at these moments where people are wrestling with believing some different things. Some of it's believable. Some of it's a little bit more difficult to believe. And so going to be looking at all kinds of issues, but go ahead and do some reading ahead and get yourself geared up and anticipate where we're going. I think it'll be good for us to all get on the same page before the series even starts.
Absolutely. It's going to be great. I'm pumped. So we're getting ready to wrap up today's episode. Any parting thoughts? Any last words?
Yeah. My thing is, I would just say, hey, like always, bring people with you. You know, a lot of people love to talk about what they believe. And so as you're having conversations and you're talking about, man, what do you believe about different issues? Encourage people to come with you, or encourage them to check it out so that you can continue the conversation about what we believe, because we're going to be zeroing in on some of the most important things that people believe in this series. And so we want to help people with that in any way that we can. So invite people and join us. We're going to be kicking it off real soon. It's going to be great.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So don't forget the I Believe series starts this weekend here at Mosaic. We'll see you Thursday at 7 p.m. or Sunday at 9:30 or 11 o'clock. Do us a favor. If you enjoyed this episode, send it to a family member, a coworker, a friend, share it with them. And like Brandon said, invite them to attend with you this weekend. It's going to be an amazing series. You're not going to want to miss it. And it's something that we'll hope that we can really help a lot of folks with, this idea of what we believe. So thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. We hope you guys have an incredible day.
You've been listening to The Loop, a podcast by Mosaic Church. For more information, visit us online at mosaicgc.com.